In today's video I will be showing you what many of you have been asking about, and that is looking inside the deck of the new KQi Air electric scooter. So this will be my first time opening the deck as well, so we will go on this journey together. And looking at the scooter from the top, there don't appear to be any screw holes unless they are under the grip tape. Just over here you can see a bit of a screw hole, but that is for one of the screws that is holding the magnesium and carbon parts of the scooter together. So I will turn the scooter around, put it on a stand, and let's take a look at it from the bottom. Okay, now that it's a bit cleaner, let's take a close look at the underside of the scooter. Starting from the back, you can see there are a few gaskets at the back here. Let me zoom in a bit. So you have a couple of gaskets at the back that are for the backlight cable and the motor cable over here. All around the bottom cover there are Allen number 3 screws. You can actually use the NIU supplied tool for this. So they are from both sides, along this side as well as the other side. And then at the front here we have this front plate that I believe the horn is under. So we will start by removing these 4 screws, and these ones are Phillips number 2. You will need a Phillips number 2 bit for them. And then we will remove all the screws around this bottom panel and see what's under there. And from the bottom we also have a more detailed look of the screws that are holding the magnesium and carbon fiber parts of the scooter together. So you have 2 big bolts on either side. I believe those were the ones that you could see from the top, just slightly outside of the grip tape. And then from the front you have these 2 additional screws. We won't be removing any of those. We are just gonna be looking what's underneath the bottom panel. And you can also see a bit of damage to the carbon fiber over here, as well as here and along the back here. That's from when I dropped the scooter accidentally on the staircase. Okay, let's get started by removing the smaller plastic front panel that is held in place by 4 Phillips number 2 screws. Okay, so this is what the screw looks like. And now let's try to slowly lift this panel up. Okay, and as you can see here, so NIU actually has this section pretty well protected and sealed. There is a rubber gasket around the electronics, and there is even a membrane that protects the horn pad. And then around there you can see a bit of dirt in the areas that are not protected. And let's take a closer look on the inside here. So we can see the electronic horn in the middle here. A bit of dirt has fallen onto it. And you can see the main wire from the display panel coming into here. So it actually presents as this tiny compartment here. And then from this compartment there are 3 rubber gaskets on top of here, and the cables go through those gaskets into the main compartment. And there are further screws holding the magnesium and carbon fiber parts together, but you can see there is a little bit of rust on these two screws as well, similar to these screws on the outside, at least on this pre-production model. So keep in mind that this was an early production sample, so the production units might be slightly different. I heard from one user that their bolts up front here were not rusted, even riding through rain, so maybe NIU has changed the materials in the production units. I'm actually impressed how well sealed this small compartment was, that there is absolutely no dirt or signs of water on the inside of it. And as you can see on the cover here as well. So NIU has done a really great job sealing the electronics. So I will carefully clean all the dirt from around here, and then we will take a look on how to take off the main compartment cover. Okay, so I cleaned all the dirt from both the cover and the area around the cover, and the few things that I have noticed. So NIU uses these screws that screw into the plastic enclosure. So one danger of that is that if you remove it more than a few times, you might damage the plastic threads. For example, I have noticed over here on this one, you can see there is a tiny small crack already forming on this one hold over here. And also, when you look at this cover, the perforated area where the horn is, so you can see there is a bit of dirt in those holes now, and they have this membrane on the back of it, but as the dirt pushes in from the front, over time I'm guessing this membrane might get damaged. You can see all the sort of imperfections in it already, and from the top here you can see it started to peel off a little bit, and a bit of dirt is poking through. So that might be the weak spot of this. It seems like when you put the cover on, the membrane edges seem to be pushed up against the horn, so that's probably the main reason why it didn't come off. But over extended period of time, I'm guessing you might have to replace this membrane and inspect this area. The one good thing is that this area seems to be completely sealed from the main deck area. There is one gasket over here, and there is an additional gasket over here entering the deck, and all the cable connections here seem to be pretty well sealed. So even if some water gets into this compartment, the worst case scenario is that the electric horn will get damaged. And as for the cables, you can see the main display cable going straight into the main compartment, and from the main compartment you have two cables that are going underneath here, and one of them is going into the LED on the front here, and the other one is going into the electronic horn, and then this more beefier cable is going into the charge part. Also, the membrane around this compartment is not rubber, it's kind of a foam membrane, as you can see in the areas where it got squeezed into the rubber gasket. So hopefully that will still be good enough for putting it back, even though in some places it's squashed pretty tight. That's pretty much everything about this small front compartment. And now let's take the screws out of the main compartment and see if we can get in there. It might be a bit tricky because the front gasket here, I'm not sure if it's gonna be holding the cover down, and then there is this additional gasket back here for the back cables. And I have also noticed that the same foam gasket that's preventing dirt and water getting into this compartment also seems to be on this main compartment. You can see a bit of the foam poking out underneath here. Okay, so let's give it a try and see how far we can get. Okay, I'm gonna now take out the screws from the main panel and let's see if we can take a look what's underneath it. Let's start from the back. And as you can see down here, I'm keeping track of where each of the screws goes. So for these ones, the screwdriver won't fit, so I will use the tool that came with the scooter. Okay, so we removed all the screws. You can see them down here. There are together 13 screws that are holding the bottom panel on the scooter. And now, well, there is a gasket on the back and a gasket on the front. So let's carefully try to lift this panel. It's not coming off easily. Let's see. Okay. I see. That's interesting. So let me take it down here. What's interesting is as I'm lifting the bottom, so it looks like the battery and the electronics are mounted actually to the plastic bottom and not to the carbon fiber top, as you can see here. So that's why it takes some effort to pull it off, because it's heavy with the battery there, and we need to be careful about the big gasket here, and also especially the gasket at the front here. Okay, so let me put you on a tripod again and see if I can lift it off. And I will probably try to lift it off and turn it sideways, because we still have the back cables and front cables connected. Okay, I will disconnect this cable going to the scooter display so that we can lift it out. And here there seems to be enough cable in the back. Here there seems to be enough cable length that I can turn it around. You can see the battery here, but at the front here I need a bit more give on this cable, so I had to take it out of this gasket and as you can see underneath, it's going straight into the battery. So let's see what I can figure out. Okay, just take it out of the gasket, and then that gives me enough space to turn it to this. Okay, so let me take you a bit closer. So this is what the KQi Air looks like on the inside. So at the front here I took this cable out of this gasket. We have this cable, and then I'm guessing they transform it into this flat cable inside this gasket, and it goes underneath the battery into the controller, and the charge cable goes into the battery. You can see the gasket from the top here. There is a bit of dirt around it. And here we have the battery and the specifications. And at the back here we have the controller. So there are two wires coming from the battery into the main power plug, and then at the bottom there you can see the flat cable is transferred into normal cables that are then going into the different plugs on the controller. At the back here we have the main motor wire and the backlight, and there is another gasket here. As you can see, this one was a bit less effective because you can see a bit of dirt made it through the gasket into the scooter, and there is a slight bit of rust on this. I'm not sure what it is, but there seems to be a few patches of rust on there. And then there is a bit of a gasket along the edges of the deck, and then over here it transfers into the gasket that's stuck to the scooter body, and it's this soft foam gasket. So I'm not sure, I mean it seems to be working for now. Only at the back here there was a bit of ingress, and then here we can, let me give you a wider view. So this is what it looks like from the inside. So these whole sides seem to be one solid piece of carbon fiber. And they did a good job putting in these metal inserts so the screws don't strip out. Here we can see how the magnesium is held to the carbon fiber part with one bolt here, another one on the other side, another one here, and then one more here, and the same on the other side. This is as far as I will go with the disassembly. There is not much else to see. The controller is filled with the rubber sort of compound, and the sides of it are metal. If you have any questions about the whole process, let me know. Now I will clean the bits where the dirt got into the scooter, and then carefully try to lay the gaskets back in place. And I will assemble it back. You can continue watching the video if you would like to see the whole process of putting it back together. Otherwise, thanks for watching, and if you like this sort of disassembly videos, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And let's continue the video putting the scooter back together now. Okay, so now let's try to put it back together. So I need to try to line up these two gaskets and, well, at the same time. Okay, that's interesting. The controller doesn't seem to be screwed into place, but it's only kind of placed there, and this one screw is properly holding it. Okay, so now the tricky part will be to line up these gaskets. And okay, front gasket snapped in place. Okay, now let's try to line up this back gasket. Yeah, this back gasket is a bit more tricky because this rubber back gasket is quite tricky to get back into place, because the motor cable has to go underneath this plastic bit, and then the rubber gasket has to squeeze in here. I will check it one more time. Hopefully it's seated correctly, because you don't want any water to get inside here, and the controller is right behind these gaskets, and as you could see, some dirt already made it through these gaskets, so this is a bit of a vulnerable point. So when you reassemble it, you just make sure this gasket is seated properly so no water and dirt gets inside, because it's right in the fender well of the scooter. And well, maybe you could put a bit of silicone around it just to be 100% sure. And as for the front one, the front gasket, the top one was a bit easier. That one was just one big piece and it snapped right into place. And now I just need to push this gasket into this space and then put this cable back into here, but I will get to that in a bit. Now, as you can see, yeah, I need to check the back gasket again. And once you have the back gasket and the front gasket lined up, then you can start putting the screws back in. This doesn't seem to be seated very well, so I'm gonna recheck the back gasket again. So as you can see, when you lift it up, there is not a lot of give in these cables, so the gasket goes right out. I want it to be seated around on the edge there. But ideally you would want to push the gasket into the frame, into the plastic first, and then sit it together, but because of the rear light cable, if you don't have it fully disassembled, then you don't have a lot of give in it, and it's a bit more tricky to properly. Okay, so let me take you back. So this is pretty much as close as I can get with the gasket. So if you decide to take this scooter apart, this back gasket is a bit of a pain, especially when you don't have the back wheel removed and the backlight removed. If you had the back wheel out and these two cables were just freely moving, it would be a lot easier to fit everything together. But if you are only taking this cover off and then trying to put it back on, it's a bit tricky to push this gasket into this small enclosure, keep the motor cable under this protective cover that protects it from the wheel, because the cables are going through the gasket at an angle, and especially the cable that is going into the electric motor is quite big, and the gasket just barely fits around it. But now it seems to be held in place pretty well. And well, I don't think I will be able to do it any better than it is now. I might put a small bit of silicone around here just in case, because as you can maybe see from the top, there is kind of a small gap in the gasket. Yeah, I think that is as good as I will be able to get it. Hopefully that's fine. And once I screw all these screws back into place, then I will get to this gasket and put these cables all into place so we can put that back on. Okay, once you have the back and front gaskets seated properly and everything looks fine, you can put back the screws. So that's what I'm gonna be doing next. Don't forget to use some blue Loctite on the screws so they don't vibrate out of the scooter. And also be careful when putting them in so you don't over tighten them, but also don't leave them too loose. So okay, so just put a little bit on there. Also don't tighten them all the way. First put the screws in and then tighten them gradually. Okay, so that's it for the main cover plate, and now let's move on to the front small cover. Okay, now let's try to put the front cover back on. As I mentioned over here in this screw hole, there seems to be a tiny crack forming, so I will clean it up with a bit of isopropyl alcohol, and I will put a tiny drop of this plastic glue onto the crack, so it's a bit stronger and it doesn't break off all the way. Okay, so just a tiny drop to fill the crack. Yeah, okay. Okay, now I will leave that to dry. Here is the cover. The only thing that I'm a bit concerned about is over here. There seems to be a bit of dirt starting to come in. This membrane is not looking the best. Also from the bottom. And without taking off the membrane, there is no easy way to clean the holes. So well, hopefully it's gonna be fine. I will just leave it as it is because I don't have a replacement membrane that I could take this one off and put a new one on. I might ask NIU about this and whether they have a replacement pad, but I'm guessing they will only have this whole assembly, not just the membrane. And before putting this panel back on, make sure that all the wires are seated fully, and also this gasket is seated properly. This wire goes through the gasket over here, so make sure it's not pinched. And also it might be a good idea to turn on the scooter and see if everything functions. I've done that off camera, and this should just go right on here. You need to squeeze it a bit in place so the gasket is compressed, and then put in the screws. Since these screws are going into plastic threads and not metal ones, I will not be putting blue Loctite on them. The cover just goes on. Like this. Take the screws and screw it back on. Since these screws are going into plastic threads, be careful not to tighten them too much or you might break the plastic. So first put all of them in. Make sure you did not squash the cable. Okay, so this front plastic cover was the last part we needed to put back. So now we have the scooter reassembled. Okay, the main parts to be careful with are the front and back gaskets that you need to carefully put in place before you put the bottom cover back in. And also be careful with the cover for the horn and see if it's damaged, then try to replace it with something similar, or if you can't replace the membrane that's in there, it's just better off to tape it off, even if the horn is gonna be less effective, because you don't want all the water and dirt coming inside here. and damaging the electric horn or potentially some of the connectors that are in here. Luckily, all the main stuff is here that is additionally sealed from this part, so the worst case scenario is that you will have to replace the electronic horn if water gets into this compartment. Overall, the KQi Air is pretty well built. There are rubber gaskets on all the cable connectors. The only thing I'm not too thrilled about is the way they did the cover for the electronic horn. At least they should provide easy access to the membranes so it's easily serviceable. But the other thing is that since these 4 screws are threaded into plastic part underneath it, you don't want to be taking this off very often or you might damage the threads, and then you would have to replace the whole plastic box that's in front here. Okay, so I think that concludes the disassembly of the KQi Air. If you have any questions or anything else about this scooter, or you would like to see some other aspects of the scooter, leave a comment down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. And I will see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.